Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
Look, it doesn't matter who's here with me. We got to talk about whatever the fuck just happened to your voice when you started this episode, Michelle.
That's just how I talk, man.
Oh, right on. Anyway, it's JD, guys, because of course it is. It's always JD.
It is always JD. It's always Michelle.
That's how we do it. That's how it goes around here.
It is, except for that one episode.
If you've never listened to We Watch Shudder before, hi, I'm JD. That's Michelle.
Yep, it's always us. Hello, we are here.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We're going now. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be hilarious? Like if that was your podcast, is you just say hello and then say goodbye?
I think that sounds like a very easy gig, and people would listen because it would be very, very quick episodes. I'm imagining our audio intro would be even longer than the dialogue, and people would binge that shit. They would listen to all 500 episodes. We could do this.
I think we can do this, Michelle. We'll just call it. What do we call it? Hi bye.
Hi bye. I like hi bye. Oh, it's great because I am a bi-romantic. So if you consider it could be HIBI.
Oh.
Hi bye. See?
Well, Michelle, what's a biromantic? Is that like a bisexual but for romance?
Yeah, essentially. Only because I've never been with a woman, so I don't know if I can consider myself bisexual. I'd be into it though, so I think I'm bisexual.
All right, I see. That's as even as woke as I try to be. There's always terminology that I still haven't heard, and that's always a fun thing to encounter.
Yeah. I like
hey
that
guys,
words exist to be more descriptive, even if I don't always use them. But I don't want to be dishonest and make it sound like I've been sleeping with a bunch of ladies. I haven't.
Right. Well, and here's the thing: the terminology, because I know a lot of people. Side note, by the way, if this is your first time listening, yes, it is a horror movie podcast. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Just hold on. There's other shit going on in the world too. Fuck, what was I just gonna say? This is why I got
bisexuality,
right?
And verbiage.
Yeah, there's all people complain sometimes about it's like, oh, there's always new terminologies, and I think about it a lot. And because something that I think about a lot is how, one of the big arguments is that like gender is a construct, right? It's a social construct. It doesn't exist. But when we talk about the gender spectrum, we also are talking about that with like polar ends on that spectrum that are represented by what we would consider traditionally male or female traits. And I just love the fact that it's sort of this whole thing where it's like, in a lot of ways, the rainbow becoming more colorful is sort of in itself a protest of the fact that the rainbow doesn't exist at all, that it all comes together as one thing, or I don't know. It's a weird. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but it's like a whole thing. And what's best about it to me is you get to say people, well, you can have it one of two ways. Either gender doesn't exist or it's a wide spectrum, because those are your only two options. You get it that way or you get it this way. And I just been thinking about that a lot lately because I have obsessive ruminant thoughts.
It's almost like LGBTQ plus issues have been at the forefront of all of our minds lately.
I can't imagine why. I can't.
No idea.
Imagine.
Not like
Michelle,
the state that you live in.
Hey, by the way, I'm not sure if you heard or not, but they have both measles and rubella in Texas now.
My favorite.
What a wonderful time to be alive. It's the first person who's died of the measles in the United States in more than, I know it's more than 10 years. It might be 15 years. And this fucking RFK Jr. is the secretary of the health department or whatever, and he's like, it's not that unusual. What the fuck? Trump had an interview or a press conference where a reporter just flat out said, doesn't the data actually show that tariffs in the long run are paid by the American companies and consumers? And he looked that guy dead ass in the eye and he said, no, I think it ends up being the country you place them on. The dude doesn't even fucking know what he's doing. We live in an America where a fucking podcaster and a reality TV show host and a fucking internet troll run, like, the fucking whole world's gonna burn. Anyway, that's happy. Let's talk about horror movies.
Actually, that does give me a good segue.
Please do.
First off, everything in the world is more horrific than anything a movie would ever. I know this. I have anxiety. I'm way more terrified of real life than I am of any movie out
How do
there.
you watch those movies? Have you looked around lately?
But I did come up with like a fun thing about today. We chose today's movie, which we haven't announced it. So if you're binging it, maybe you don't know. But let's be honest, you looked at the title.
I also kind of announced it about a week and a half ago when I asked for people's thoughts on it on the Facebooks and the Instagrams.
They don't follow us on Facebook. It's John Humphreys only. Nobody else cares about us.
Look, Sam is out there too.
That's true. We do have some people.
Cripes,
okay,
Michelle. We have lots of people.
I refuse to believe that because I have therapy that I have to take where I pay her to convince me that people like me sometimes. And if I listen to you, that lady's going to be out of a job. So I have to reject Mythbusters. I have to reject your reality and substitute my own.
I don't mean to derail things even further, but of course I do. I just flipped over to the IMDb page for the movie we're about to start talking about. You know how IMDb will sometimes just like play a trailer for a totally different movie up at the top of the screen while you're looking at the movie page?
No, because I have that turned off.
Oh.
Because it drives me nuts.
Oh, well, I don't know what this movie is because it's obviously silenced, but there's these people on a chicken farm and they're just like throwing chickens around a barn, like not in a violent mean way, but they're just like chicken tossing. There's like a little fat kid and he's tossing I have no context for this movie except that I'm watching an old man and a couple of kids throw chickens in a barn. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
That should be the description of this episode. Okay. Continuing my segue.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Now it's no longer a segue because now I'm segueing from chickens being tossed around. But let's just pretend that part didn't happen. We were talking about America. Okay. It is fucked in America. Pardon my French, but it's fucked. And today's movie is a Canadian film. And I love Canada. I need to show my support. They have way better ketchup than America does.
Not just a Canadian film, Michelle.
Oh, I know. French Canadian.
Yes, it is a French Canadian film, Quebecois film.
I'm glad that's French Canadian as opposed to France, which would be fine. But it's just like perfect timing of like, look, we're not all awful people. Also,
though, don't kid yourself, Michelle. This movie is very fucking French.
Oh, it's so French. I was surprised to learn it was
really
Canadian.
French.
Because there are definitely some not polite people in this movie, so that was very surprising.
Yeah, you're not
like,
wrong.
What? They're not just.
What's the movie, Michelle? Everybody knows it's on the title of the episode.
It's Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, which the first time I heard that title, I went, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to see that."
Yeah, that's a title that gets right up in your brain.
Yeah, and I was like, it's either going to be artsy and awful,
right,
or it's going to be really, really fun. And the first time I watched it was on Mubi, the streaming service that nobody has, but I had for a week because the substance dropped on Mubi. And I watched a couple movies on Mubi, and I was very concerned going into this one because I'm like, oh no, they are speaking French, and this is on Mubi. This is going to be the artsiest shit I'm going to have to endure for the week.
All right, so I'm going to hit you with the descripty script.
Yes.
For this movie. And then we're going to talk about it. Debut film, by the way, from the writer-director Ariane Louis Says. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with French name.
They're going to be so mad at us.
I know, they're not listening.
Sacre bleu!
Also, by the way, co-written by Christine Doyon. I want to make sure we give the other writer credit as well. Humanist, let's see. So this is the descriptive script from Shudder. Surprisingly very brief this time, just one sentence. You know what? I'm going to do the one from IMDb instead because it's also surprisingly brief, just one sentence. Here it is. A young woman vampire is unable to kill to meet her need for blood, but may have found a solution in a young man with suicidal tendencies. Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. 2024. Quebecois. 91 minutes.
2023, not 2024.
Well, that depends on how you judge. You know how I determine those dates, Michelle.
I know.
Anyway.
It was festival release in 2023, not widely distributed until 2024. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the film we're talking about. Normally, this is where I would say, hey, and I am going to say, hey, Michelle, would you like to hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts? But regular listeners or people who've checked out some of our episodes, if you heard our Best of the Year episode, this was one of Michelle's favorite films last year, so I got to assume this is a 5 skull for you, don't I?
Oh, yeah.
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 But
this is fantastic.
Yeah, all that aside, give us some of your spoiler-free thoughts then on this, for you, 5 skull film.
Yeah, so this was my, I believe, third time watching it, possibly second. I know I don't remember. For a little bit, I was consumed by this movie, but I don't know if I fully watched it end to end more than once. So second time, definitely seeing it and paying attention. And here's what I love about it. I don't like artsy bullshit very much. Like, usually that doesn't appeal to me. And when I remembered this film after watching it, like back in November, like preparing for this episode, I could have sworn that the main lady, Sasha, that she doesn't speak or doesn't speak much. I thought this was mostly like a lot of looks back and forth between her and other characters and just having these very vivid facial expressions. And I was convinced that that was majority of this movie. And then there's a lot of dialogue in this. So I expected it. I remembered liking it. I remembered it being way more artsy fartsy than it actually is. It's just like a normal movie. And so I think it's very funny that I have this memory of like a much more what's the word, like cultured film than what we got, but I'm so happy that it is not that. Yeah, the main girl, I think the reason I have that in my head is that she is just fantastic. Sarah Monpetit and Felix Antoine Bernard play the two main characters. Their chemistry and the way that they feed off of each other, hot pun intended, is just so good. I want the two actors to fall in love and have children one day because I do want to see the facial expressions that would result from their offspring. You know what? They don't even have to have love. I want somebody to put an egg in like a scientific lab. Take one of her eggs and some of his sperm and mix them in whatever way and put them inside whatever incubator or lady you need to do to make people. I don't know how sex works. I don't understand it. They come from the stork. Anyway, talk to the stork and get their genetics and show me that offspring because I would watch that child with rapt attention, which is difficult because children are very hard to have rapt attention about.
Oh, okay. So I believe you had wrapped up your spoiler-free thoughts before I had to go deal with the dog for a minute. Yeah. Michelle, had you?
Yeah, I did get. Cool. I did get through them.
5 skulls. 5 skulls for Michelle.
Great movie. It's so cute. This is a cute horror movie. I love this.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, JD.
Yeah.
Do you got some spoiler-free thoughts you'd like to hit us with?
I do. Have some spoiler-free thoughts. Much like you, when I heard that title, I was like, this could either be real interesting or just a nightmare slog that I do not want to get through.
Real French.
Yeah, like real French in a not the substance way. But so I actually have seen it twice now because the first time I watched it way too early because I forgot that we had another full week before we were actually recording this episode. So I watched it again today just to make sure everything was fresh in my mind, because life is stressful and weird, and I had already kind of gapped out a lot of what happens in the movie so far as plot detail. And I'm glad I did, because this movie is even better the second time around. This is a really, really good... Like, I have to say right away in the spoiler-free part that this is maybe the least horror adjacent movie we have ever done.
It's the cutest movie about a vampire. It's so cute.
There are a couple of small moments where there's a little bit of gore, but in a less campy way. First of all, this movie is funnier than I expected it to be. I didn't realize it was going to be playing comedy, but it's a very dry, very black comedy that is very subdued. It's not like you sit and watch it and you don't belly laugh, but you're just like, oh, that was clever. That was actually really good. So really well written. And I love that it's about things, but it's not heavily about things. Right? There are some philosophical things going on here, you know. As you can tell from the title, this is probably a movie where you're going to be talking about, you know, right to die and that sort of thing. But it's all there and suggested, but it just puts it out there and doesn't even comment on it other than through what happens in the plot. You understand where these writers are coming from on those issues, but it just is what it is. I like everything. You're absolutely right. The chemistry between these two leads is unbelievable. There's a couple of scenes in particular that we'll talk about in detail here coming up where it's just phenomenal. The cinematography in here was really good. The cinematography is kind of artsy-fartsy. It's that kind of cinematography where it feels like they constructed their images not so much for maybe almost like a painting, right? There was a frame image in mind. I can't say enough good things about this movie. I'm glad I didn't see it until this year, because it would have made my top movies list of last year a lot more difficult to figure out. Because this is a 5-skull movie for me too. This is fantastic. What a great film.
Yay.
It's, you know what the tone of this movie, I was about to say this and then I moved on to something else. The tone of the film, in a much less campy way, reminds me of like a French Addams Family, almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in more detail when we get into the spoiler section. Are you ready for the spoiler section, Michelle?
I am. It
Okay.
sounds like your dog is real ready for it.
Yeah,
I cannot wait to hear it.
I'm going to go take care of a couple of things. This will be another good, safe edit point, and we'll be right back.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to We Watch Shudder.
Do you ever have a dog, and you just ultimately what it becomes is you just kind of want to kill yourself, because obviously you're not going to hurt the dog. But oh my God, you just want out any fucking way you could possibly get out. This little shit.
What you say is that you need a humanist vampire, because then you're taking yourself out for a couple different reasons. Just put Riley in a room with anybody, and this lady will have her food source for the rest of her life.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm never
I
wrong.
love how you did that. So this is the spoiler section of our talk about Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. You didn't need that reminder, because for you, nothing has happened. It just jumped into this. For us, it's been a minute. Oh, so here we are to talk spoilers. It's been a couple minutes. Spoiler section. Michelle, this is where you get to tell people what happened in this movie. So why don't you do that while I take some medicine?
Okay. So Sasha is a little girl, and she's just a perfectly normal little girl, like how little normal little girls be. And it's her birthday, and her family's there, and they're like, "We got you a clown." And Sasha's really into the clown, and you're like, "Wow, what a perfectly normal family." Although they don't seem like to like the clown, and they did invite a clown for just like a family birthday party, which is odd. Normally it would be like several children instead of just like, "Here, child, here is this clown for your entertainment." And then Rico the clown, Rico the something, I forgot what his title was, but Rico the juggler, whatever.
Rico the
Rico,
Rooster.
thank you. I was like, Rico the something. Rico has to go in a box for a trick. And then he gets stuck in the box. And then it turns out that Sasha's family is just going to eat Rico. And she doesn't want to do it. And then she's traumatized. And this is how vegans begin. And basically, she is the equivalent of a vegan human, but she is a vegan vampire. She will only drink blood that comes from like the little medical packs. And now we are much later in time. And I did have to look this up, and I became very upset because Sarah Monpetit is the girl who plays Sasha, and she has a very ambiguous age. I am terrible at like telling people's age. They're either baby, teenager, old as fuck. Like there's nothing in between. Like if you're any not those ages, I don't know what you are. She is 24. And I did the math, and she was born in 2001, and she's 24, and that's very upsetting to me. And I know this is a thing that, like, it's been talked about on the internet so much, but it is just upsetting that people were born after 9/11 and exist in the world, and they are adults now who can legally drink. I just don't think that's fair to anybody, especially me.
It's pretty wild.
It is wild and should be illegal. Okay, so Sarah Monpetit playing Sasha, aka playing the exact opposite of Mia Goth. Like if Mia Goth, if she had an opposite, it would be Sarah Monpetit. No eyebrows, versus very big eyebrows, and all of that stuff. Anyway, so Sasha is now an older girl, and that's how they do. They be aging. And she plays the piano, and she's very, like, I want to say she's quirky. She seems a little quirky. It's probably because she's a vampire and ages much slower than the rest of us. And so she is trying to figure out how to kill a person because she has gone through all these tests and determined that, oh my God, she has empathy for humans. That's why she can't eat them. And her family is cutting off her blood supply. And she's like, but I'll starve. And they're like, you won't if you figure out how to eat a person. And her fangs do retract. And what's the opposite of retract? Come out.
Yeah,
They tract. Do they tract and then they
no,
retract?
man, now I'm gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah.
You continue. I'll do some Googling.
Anyway, yeah, so they tract and retract so that they're only there when she's feeding and she's not like, biting herself accidentally in her sleep. And so she every time she tries to eat a person, they don't come out. It's, we've all been there, bro. We know what whiskey does sometimes to your ability to perform in that moment. And she goes to a suicide group of people who are all suicidal, and they're like, hey, this is the support group for us to talk about it. And there she meets Paul. She very briefly met Paul earlier, but she really meets Paul now. And basically he's just tired of life. He's not like he has like not a great life, not a horrible life, kind of an average life, and he's just over it. I love Paul. And he is just like, whatever. And like, there's an incident at his school. Oh, see, so Paul is high school. Aha. See, so she looks so much younger. I have no concept of ages, and I was curious. I thought it was gonna be like 15 years old. Anyway, so they're all just babies to me. So Paul at school, a bat flies into the gym and gets lost, and then he murders the bat in front of the students. And then his mom gets called because the school counselor is like, this is how serial killers start, right? And then we get my favorite line from the entire fucking movie, which is Paul defending himself by saying, I wouldn't kill anyone but myself. And then his mom just turns and looks at him for a very long time. It's that kind of humor in this that is just so, like, it's not, it's hilarious in the context, but it's not like crazy, like yuck yuck waka waka kind of jokes. So Paul and Sasha, they become friends, and Paul's like, hey, you could kill me because you're a vampire and I'd be giving my life up to you, and I'm just kind of indifferent to the world. I'm very apathetic. And she's like, okay, but we should get to know each other first. And not really, but that's what winds up happening, is that she's like, do you want to listen to my music with me? And here, I will explain the vampire lore that is specific to this movie, because all vampire movies need at least one thing that makes them different, and I'm a humanist, and also I do age just slowly, which I don't think they ever talk about how she turned. But this does mean that she turned very young, or vampires can reproduce. And I have questions, and I've seen this several times now, and I don't know the answer. I'm glad they didn't tell me, because it has left me with a lot of questions. But oh god, the other part of me wants to know so badly if vampires can make new vampires via reproduction in this universe. So she figures out that she likes Paul. She got a little crush on Paul. And she's like, well, I can't kill you unless we fulfill your dying wish first. And he's like, okay, well, I guess I want to get revenge on all the people who are mean to me. And she's like, okay, let's do that. So they go on like a fun little quest. And I don't remember all the things that they do, but like he leaves a dead bat on the teacher's stairs, to like
No,
really
throws it in her face.
throws it in her face. That's what it was. What movie did I just watch where something was left on a porch? I'm getting it mixed up with something else I saw yesterday. Okay. So throws it in her face. And he just like gets revenge on people, and it's fun. And then they're like, okay, well, I guess it's time for Paul to die because he got his dying wish. And she's having a real hard time with it. And he's like, here's what I've realized during all the encounters with my bully that Michelle perfectly summed up and definitely did not skip over. Uh, in all of those times, your fangs were able to come out when you needed to protect me. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna kill me now. And I don't remember how the logic of that works exactly, but she is able to get it up for him. Yes, JD.
He tells her, just think about your sister hurting me.
That was it. I did not remember what exactly did it for her. So yeah, then she kills Paul. But not really. He's just the undead. So instead of becoming dead, he becomes undead. But wouldn't he just have been undead when he was alive? Isn't that the opposite? But I guess on the opposite spectrum, we have dead and alive, and undead is apparently not the opposite of dead. So he starts convulsing, and she's like, I gotta call my family because oh shit. And they show up, and they're real mad that she made more vampires, because she's like, oh, Sasha, the only way we do that is via sex and physical reproduction in this world. How dare you? You know the lore of our universe. And then they're like, okay, I guess we won't kill him. And so they don't. And then this movie ends with the greatest conclusion ever, which is that Paul's mom knows that they're both vampires, is okay with it, works at a hospital, and now tells them when there are patients who are going through the end of their lives, and they consent to it. And then Sasha very like painlessly like drains their blood so she has that supply. And like, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but right to die has been a big topic, trying to be vague, lately for some of my close people in my life. And I think this movie just like hit way harder watching it yesterday.
Sure.
Because of that. Because like, oh my God, it's I completely forgot, like, obviously the name says that, and I remembered the ending, but it wasn't until I actually watched it that I got like emotional watching it. So this movie is fantastic, and I love that it ends on such a like happy note about death. Like, we see an old lady die and we're happy about it,
Well, and she's happy about it.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's the crucial element of the whole. Okay, so let's start there. There's so much to talk about in this movie. I love that this movie is about the right to die and about euthanasia, but it's not about those things, right? Like, they're in there. It's sort of the backdrop of all of this and what brings them together. But it's also not about like the argument. It's about just making the statement that like everybody is totally on board. Like, his mom is clearly not just on board, but on board because she believes in what they're doing. And the way they communicate that in a very brief scene is really excellent directing, by the way.
Yeah.
But like, She's on board. They're both there. And then you see them. It reminds me a lot of Dr. Sleep. Right? With what's his name and the cat who go to visit the old folks when they're near the end. It's just a real poignant. But then also they come around the corner at the end with their glasses and long coats like they're in the Matrix or whatever, and it's just so silly.
No, that was Paul's idea. That was definitely Paul's idea.
Yeah.
Sasha would never.
Oh, I don't know. I think once she comes out of her shell, she's pretty great.
Yeah, but he came up with the silly idea, and she's like, oh, I'll do it to make him happy because I love him because we are the cutest couple ever.
Yeah.
And then she was on board. She was like, okay, I do like this. It's kind of silly. My quirky little Paul.
Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about with this, one of the things I love the most about it, again in the writing, is that this is one of the this is a straight up just teenage romantic comedy, right? But it sidesteps every one of the cliches from those films by turning it into something else. Like that whole sequence where they're in the hotel and she ends up biting him and turning him into a vampire, and the way the whole thing goes down, that it's weirdly the most non-sexual sexual thing I may have ever seen. Like you can see exactly what they're doing, but somehow also at the same time it never feels like coy or silly, right? Like it's like, oh, I get what they're doing here. That whole, with the way it's framed, where they're sitting on the bed and he goes to and lays back and she's sitting there and they zoom in on her and like her breath starts racing. And the idea also here that you mentioned that in a lot of ways a sort of gender role swap in the sex metaphor here, like which one is the piercer and which one is the pierced, to put it mildly. It's so well written. It functions on so many levels. I have so many random thoughts that I want to get to. Why don't you talk about some stuff that you love about this movie for a little while?
Yes. One of the issues that I always have with vampires and romance is the age difference, and I still feel that way in this. She is 68, I think.
Here's how I thought about it, because I had that same question too. I think she's supposed to appear to be about 17, because as it turns out, 17 times 4 is 68.
Oh, that makes sense. But it still does not change the fact that she has 68 years of experience, and that makes me uncomfortable because Paul is like so much younger and so much more naive, and that is the thing I have as an issue with all vampire movies. However, that said, there's something about, I'm trying to say this in a non-creepy way, but the fact that it's Sasha pursuing Paul as opposed to Paul pursuing Sasha. I think it's just because it's such a standard predatory thing, and I'm still not okay with it. It's the weirdest part of vampire movies, and I'll never be able to get over vampire romances for that purpose if it's like these young of people, like I think if somebody was 50 and they fell in love with a vampire who's 700 years old, that's different. Paul's a high schooler, and like that's my really only big complaint, and it's just a complaint with vampire lore in general.
No, and I understand that completely. I think, and you're absolutely right. In the literal sense, regardless of how much you're physically aging, you're mentally aging, and you're having experiences. But I think
you know how to do taxes and shit. That's adult shit.
I think the reason it works here and why it's not off-putting to me, at least in any way, is they do have that simple moment where they're talking about it. She mentions she's 68, and there's a brief thing where she says something about how, like, yeah, we just age much more slowly. And I get it. There's still they speak about it, right? They draw attention to it because they do say that, but I think the implication is also perhaps that they are maturing emotionally and psychologically at a slower rate as well. So the idea is she's like the equivalent of a vampire teenager, which again, in the literalness of it, doesn't hit all that. But man, let me tell you, first of all, talk about the one thing I never would have expected we would be talking about when we came into this conversation, because weirdly, that thought never crossed my mind, but you make an excellent point.
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
I have a follow-up because I've thought about it because it's just the main issue I have with vampire stuff in general, if there's a romantic element. And that is if they're young and beautiful and vibrant, they're usually like early 20s, or in this case, Paul's a high schooler. And it always makes me so uncomfortable because I'm like, that vampire has lived a long life. I don't care if they have been physically involved with anybody. That is not it. There is a mental difference that being around for 60 years you will have. However, one of the things, I view this as a very cute rom-com, but they could be platonic friends and it would be the exact same movie. And I think that actually makes me feel much more comfortable with it because there's not anything physical until she eats him.
Right. And like I thought about that for a while too, and I really feel like you might be right there. Because again, there's the turning scene, which definitely is playing on the trope of like oh, we're gonna lose our virginity together sort of thing. It's definitely playing on that element from teenage romantic comedies, but I don't know that it's intended to be seen as a metaphor for that. I think it's playing on that as you know, in its imagery and its stylization
method.
Right, but it's not actually, because I did think that they never kiss, they never hold hands, there's never any, the only scene, there are two scenes where there's any implication of anything romantic, at least for me, and one of them is later in the movie when she goes to pick him up, and he smiles a couple times and she tells him to stop smiling, but that's when they're leaving, right? And they're leaving together, and maybe he's just smiling because he's happy that he's finally out, right? There are plenty of things that could be, but then of course you have the scene, and this is one of the scenes that I have wanted to talk about. I want to get your thoughts on it, and I think you know which one. When they go to Denise's apartment, and it's the scene with the records. Right, and then they put on the record.
Scene.
It's such a, first of all, the quintessential moment of understanding the chemistry between these two actors. What an incredible, because they don't say a thing for I don't know how long it is. It feels like several minutes. It's probably like 2 minutes, but that scene where he's just like, they walk into her room and then he goes to look at the records, and they go, and she just sort of starts that little dance, and then he starts that little dance, and there's just that sort of back and forth, and again, it's playing on that very teen romantic comedy meet cute sort of framework. But again, I do not know for sure if, and I'm glad you mentioned that there's any necessary, I don't know why I emphasized it that way, implication of a romantic relationship here, and I really enjoyed that part of it too. What did tell me about your experience with that record scene?
Yes. So I think Paul at least has a crush. I don't know if it ever develops past that, but this is a cute, quirky girl who he just met, and of course he's going to have a crush. But the fact that there is never an established relationship, there is no kiss, nothing like that, it doesn't feel forced, and it feels like such a more romantic and adorable movie because none of it is forced, and they could just be platonic people who, like, I love that. And that record scene is like the epitome of it because, like, she's just being herself. She's not like trying to impress him or anything, but he's still like thinks she's cool, at the very least. I think he does have a little bit of a crush. And then she's just like, oh, I'm gonna have to kill this guy. And the way she cuts it short, because she's like, oh no, like I like the guy I'm about to murder and feed on, and that sucks. And like I think that's just, it's such a cute moment, ended with such like kind of a grim
Oh,
reality for
it's
her.
such a sweet movie.
Yeah, I love how
Like,
cute it is. Like,
yeah,
I cannot use the word cute enough.
and
It's an
not
adorable movie.
yeah, and not in like an annoying or saccharine way. Like it's legitimately just an adorable film, and it definitely goes to this is okay. Here's another one I want to get your thoughts on. Something that I really liked is like he just figures out. He just knows. It's like, oh, you're a vampire, right? Like, there's never any like big surprise
That's why I
or
love Paul.
reveal.
Unshaken. Just
Well,
fine with whatever.
and here's why I ask. And like his mom apparently is just fine with it from at least that scene. We never see the transition for her, but they go to a doctor who knows about vampires, and they go to a psychiatrist who knows about vampires. So my question is, and for in the early time, I just assumed, oh, so the vampires have infiltrated these types of, like, there are vampire doctors in the sense that the doctor is a vampire, so then he works with vampires. But how do they have that training? And then he just is this a world where they just know that vampires are a thing, but they don't know how to, like, figure out who is one or how to do anything about it?
100% my thoughts exactly. I thought that this was vampires exist, but they're not necessarily out. Like,
right.
Gay people exist. You might not know who they are until they tell you, but you can guess. Like,
oh,
I think it's
Jesus,
one of those.
I'm an idiot. Yeah, obviously that's what it is. Yes, obviously. Yeah. Oh God, I love having these conversations, and that's exactly why. Yeah,
I do think that a little bit different is that they probably can exist openly, because obviously a lot of them are murdering non-consenting people. So it is a little bit different in that you cannot be out because you will go to prison.
Right, and that's again why I say it's using a lot of these ideas, but presenting them in a very unique and creative way. I was just like, and again, if I hadn't watched this a second time, that whole element of it, it's like, oh, these, and I love that it's just there, right? It's not a part of the story, but it's a layer that's worked in well enough. And the reason why I feel like that's probably exactly what it is because you and I both came to that conclusion independently. Right, and it's that's gotta be what's like and there's so many layers like that, so many. It paints a really detailed and easy to understand background to their world, while still being this just very quaint. Also, maybe another thought I had with the whole like, are they, aren't they? Maybe there are, and it's just a romantic, loving relationship where sex isn't a big part of it, right? Where physical intimacy is not a significant thing, right? It's just they just connect on that level. So it infuses so many of those ideas. And I can't say enough good things about both the writing and the direction. There's so many shots in this that in a lot of ways remind me of Ari Aster's shots, the way they're framed, just these symmetrical, still frame images that they put together. That scene in the bedroom with the records, also weirdly reminiscent of a scene from A Clockwork Orange that plays very differently. But
a little.
Yeah,
a little different.
Just a little. This one doesn't have the penis lollipops, I guess. But
maybe it should, though.
Maybe it should.
Yeah, I have to hit home the fact that this establishes so much good lore, but the things that we picked up on are like 10 seconds of oh no, did I just lose JD? Oh, you're back. No, you're gone. You're back.
You dropped for just a second. You were
Okay.
Just make the last point you were making, because you dropped out just as you were starting to make it.
Perfect. I had not gotten very far into talking at all, so I know that you did not miss much. The lore that is established is such solid lore that you and I are like, oh yeah, vampires are real here, and oh yeah, like they just age slowly, but those are all tiny bits of conversation peppered in throughout here. They never try to like outright establish all of these different things.
Right.
And that is why it is so well written, because we just accept like, oh, that's slightly different from how they usually work. Okay, neat. And yet I still don't know if Sasha was turned as a child or birthed from a vampire mother.
That's the next thing that I wanted to ask you about, because in the lore of this movie, obviously we know that you can turn a person to be a vampire, right? And apparently it's just, you just don't drain them completely and you help them survive the blood loss and then they become a vampire. Because there's never any specific mention that they have to then drink your blood, which is a part of a lot of vampire lore.
Yeah, I guess the more common one of the stuff that I've experienced is draining them mostly and then letting them live.
Oh, really?
But that also is partially because of Twilight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well.
After Twilight, that became a lot more common. So, yes.
Yeah, but I had that same question. Is like do vampires then in a way just become like a different species and they're able to have normal sexual reproduction with each other still? And she's was she born to these people? I don't think so. And let me tell you why. Because she and her sister look nothing alike at all, and
That's her cousin.
Is it her cousin, Denise?
That's her cousin.
Why did I think it was her sister? I don't know. Okay, well, in that case, that goes right out the goddamn window. Never mind. But no, it is interesting, right? Is that what it is? Was she turned as a child, and then from that point, is that where the aging starts to slow down? I don't know. But a lot of stuff and again on that, like the writing on it has these very thought-provoking philosophical things to say, but also these very interesting sort of like, it's rare you get a really interesting new vampire idea.
Here's what I know for sure. A vampire baby, probably cute as hell, but breastfeeding would really suck. I came up with that in my head. Good job, me.
Okay, so that pulls up another thought about this, because the title. You have Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. Side note, by the way, this movie apparently was also released in some places under the title Humanist vampire too sensitive to kill. What a terrible, I know, what a terrible title. No.
Oh, that's awful.
No, yeah, this is so much better, but
shorten it to Humanist vampire. Like, if anything, just
too
shorten
sensitive
it,
to kill.
Too sensitive to kill.
What
awful.
I really enjoyed here that title, because another thing that they layer in here casually but never talk about directly except one brief scene is Sasha the vampire is suicidally depressed too. Like, she almost like
sunlight.
What?
She wants to see the sunlight.
Yeah, and there are multiple scenes in here where she almost eats people food, which we have made very clear will kill. Well, and the cookie thing happens first before we know that eating people food will kill her, and then it's like, oh, okay. But then there are these, and I didn't quite latch onto it the first time around again, but there are multiple moments, and it's like, oh yeah, she didn't just go to that suicide support group because she was looking for somebody that she could maybe, she also went there because she's having those same issues herself, which is, again, a wild thing to see in a vampire story.
By being a humanist vampire, she also is probably the most human-like vampire.
Right.
Like, she does not seem separate from humans. She just happens to need to eat them. But she's just relatable. I love Sasha and Paul so much.
Yeah,
like this might be my favorite couple, non-couple of like it's definitely up there in the record books. They're fantastic and adorable.
Yeah, I do also, though, want to talk about the comedy in this movie a bit, because it's exactly like you said. It's not the kind of movie where I don't do a lot of laughing out loud when I watch movies by myself anyway, but it's a very dry, a very black sort of gallows humor. But again, also very like the dry delivery, like that line is so good when they're in the principal's office and he's just like, I wouldn't kill anybody but myself. And it almost just passes right by, like, and then the mom just acknowledges it just a little bit. When, like, little bits of slapstick, like when she scares him and he just runs headlong into that fucking shipping container. I laughed out loud at that. I love a good slapstick pratfall. The movie is so funny. They go on that crazy, like weird sort of teen comedy montage, running around, doing wild stuff to different people. It's just, there's a ton of stuff that I'm forgetting here while it's just slipping through my fingers like sand, but it's just so goddamn funny. What were some of your favorite funny moments?
Definitely that moment. I think the indifference they have to killing humans, so it is just like a solid throughout concept of just like her family is just like, it's no big deal, just murder people, and she is very much like, no, I like them. I think one of the funniest things for me is the beginning when they are so confused that she has empathy and can't eat humans. I think the establishment of like how that happened, where she liked Rico the rooster too much.
Yeah,
killed her birthday
clown. She was, and that's what tells me that she must have been born to them, right? Because, like, this is apparently supposed to be her first eating. Mm-hmm. So, and the other vampires... Oh, side note, by the way, JP the vampire, fucking hilarious little backdrop character side story in here. But, yeah, fucking... Just incredibly... The family, you're right, is so... The old aunt... The 375-year-old aunt is just delightful. And where it came to me is, I mentioned earlier that this movie, to me, definitely feels like, I have to believe at least one of the big inspirations for this is the Addams Family. Because, first of all, Sasha has a very obvious Wednesday Addams vibe going on, right? But then also you do have the wacky family. You have the crazy aunt and the parents and then it's the cousin, not the sister, the cousin. And then, you've got her cousin's wacky boyfriend type who she doesn't even really maybe like all that much, but they're kind of stuck together. And she's bringing a boy home for the first time, and it's all just, and then little things like, we don't see Denise slaughter the hitchhikers that she brings home that one time. We just see the aftermath of it, which is one of the few little gore moments. And I noticed the hooks above her kitchen island, and it never once dawned on me the first time around that her kitchen island is an autopsy table. It's so...
I did not catch that.
It's a fucking autopsy table. Here's another thing from that. It just now occurred to me, because a question I was going to ask you is, who the fuck just drives their car through a garage door into the warehouse they live in? They're vampires. They don't need to worry about carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh,
That's why I was like, how does
it's
she
more establishment of this world.
It's God. These are my favorite episodes where the more we talk about a movie, the more I realize how fantastic it is. God,
I'm
what a
convinced
great
the
movie.
writers are actual vampires. It's the only way. And see, now I'm accepting that vampires are in the world and that I might just not know who they are. This movie's doing that. Vampires are real. And next time I get some bad thoughts, I'll call
like
somebody like
like
Sasha.
they have such well-educated vampire doctors that they know, oh no, what's happening is that when she's having it, it's not triggering the normal part of her brain that most of us have triggered. So it's not even, in a way, it's like she literally physically can't do it. It's part of her nature. It's who she is. But it's like, yeah, but you're a vampire. This is what you're supposed to do. God, this what a fantastic movie. I can't say enough good things about it.
I love Canada. That's my final thought on the subject. Much better ketchup than America.
Is
Their
it really?
snacks are so, yeah, because they use a different type of sugar, like the natural sugar or whatever. I used to have a friend who would visit Canada regularly and bring me back ketchup, and I would use it just for like the special days of like, this is my special Canadian ketchup day.
I do wish we had just straight up ketchup flavored potato chips in the States a little more frequently.
I won't try them. I
Really?
can't. I can't. I can't get over the hurdle in my head of watching people eat ketchup as a like in school. That was always like that, or people who eat mustard, or oh my god, me a gag, or ranch. Like I can't watch people do that, and I think it's disgusting. And now that's just in my head of like those people probably drink ketchup. Ugh, ugh, ugh.
Wait.
Nope. Oh my god, ugh.
But you just said how much you love Canadian ketchup.
Yeah, it's different than making my potato chip ketchup.
Oh, okay.
Like, don't make my potato chip ketchup, but maybe I would definitely dip a potato chip into ketchup.
Well, then
I haven't
how do you-
tried it.
how
But,
do you
like,
feel
making my potato chip, it's too far.
How you feel about an all dressed?
A what?
An all dressed potato chip.
Oh, I probably wouldn't like that either.
It's,
No, actually, I don't really like potato chips, so that's part of the
Oh,
problem.
okay. Well, that's fair. All dressed is another
love
mostly
potatoes.
Canadian thing. It's like a kind of like a barbecue and it's a little bit of zesty, a little bit of smoky, a little bit of spicy, a little bit of vinegar, sort of.
I like my potato chips naked. No.
Well, you're dumb. Anyway, wow, I just dropped a you're dumb just because you don't like flavors on your tater chips. That's weird.
Oh, the sad part is you're not wrong. I am a little bit dumb. I'm in an engineering class right now, and I feel like the biggest idiot. I have no idea how science works, and I really wish that I did. I love math. I do not understand science. I'm currently learning about electricity, and they're like, a lot of people think water is a good conductor, but it's actually a good insulator. I'm like, I have never once wondered whether water is a good conductor or insulator. What do you mean a lot of people are mistaken about that? Who fucking thinks about water and how it conducts electricity?
Well, people who have seen a zillion movies where when electricity hits water, it goes shooting through it and zaps people.
Yeah, but I've never thought like, wow, that water seems like a good conductor of electricity. I've thought that was a cool kill.
Well,
I've never thought past that. I don't have a scientific mindset.
Why do you think the electricity went through the water?
I don't think. That's the thing. I just don't think about that.
Side note, by the way, it's because pure water doesn't conduct electricity well.
I just wrote a paper on it because distilled water is an insulator. Water is a conductor. I know you just Googled this while I was talking, but you could have just asked me. Water that we come into in our everyday lives has other things mixed in, variety of chemicals, things it's come in contact with, and that's the actual conductor. I know. I just wrote a paper on it. What I'm telling you is that I hated writing a paper on it. It doesn't make sense.
Then why are you in the class, Michelle?
Because I want my bachelor's degree.
In what?
Data analysis and visualization.
And that requires you to do this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad I don't give a shit about formal education.
Yeah, I'm starting to not give a shit, but yet I still need to maintain my 4.0 GPA, so I have to care.
Yeah, that's fair.
I got a 23 out of on an assignment that was 25 points, and it just ruined my day.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anybody who listens to this podcast long enough knows that I
Nobody's
am incredibly
surprised.
hard on myself and set impossible standards
You
that I
said
cannot
hard on.
meet. I have a 98% in my college level math class, and I'm sad about it. Like, of course, because that doesn't leave me enough buffer to potentially like get a couple of questions wrong on a test. If I wind up with a B, I might have to go find a Sasha vampire and have a conversation with her. Be like, I got a B. It was my first B, and I can't do it anymore. And she'll be like, okay.
I have a couple random questions about this movie, just little things that I saw along the way that have nothing to do with the story, but just things that I want to know. When Paul comes back home after getting beat up, when Sasha kills Henry, his mom is sleeping on the couch, and we get a cut shot from what would be her perspective, and there's a TV that's on, and the credits are rolling for a movie. I want to know what fucking movie that was. To the extent that I want to pause the movie at that shot, zoom in, get enough of a chunk of the credits that I can do some digging around and find out what that movie is. Does it matter? Probably not. But I gotta know.
Yeah, because it clearly was a movie somebody selected and went, this is the movie. That's not a random thing. They didn't turn on cable TV and that's what happened to be playing.
And somebody might say, well, it may have been a random DVD because they just wanted to have some credits. But just based on everything else that's going on in this movie, I don't know that it's gonna be something, but I gotta find out for sure if it is something or not. I gotta know.
I'm making a note because I know exactly how I will find this, and I will get you an answer.
We gotta know what that movie was. And there was another thing.
How far into the movie does that happen again?
About probably like an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
It's after he gets beat up and Sasha kills Henry in the park and he goes home all beat up. He gets out of the shower and then he sees because he gets there and then he finds out she hasn't found his note yet, so he takes that away and that whole deal.
Perfect. I have made a note. I will have an answer for you. I know exactly how to find out if that's a real movie.
There was another thing that I wanted to ask, but I completely sort of spaced out what it was here now. But yeah, I gotta know.
Nothing else to say. I got banana cream pie in the fridge. That's what I know.
Do you?
I'm eating that after this.
I got some cottage cheese in the fridge. I also got some. Oh fuck! I have leftover Chinese from earlier today.
I got pancakes and butter pecan ice cream and banana cream pie. So I am gonna have like a great fucking weekend.
I also just remembered Mom and I are going grocery shopping tomorrow. Fuck! I'm so excited, Michelle.
I got nothing else to say. I want to go eat my pie.
Oh, is that what you're trying to intimate, Michelle? Is that you want to wrap up this episode?
Like, we got through my list like a half hour ago. At this point, you're just blowing my mind with more things that come up. But I have nothing to contribute to the conversation. My brain is just thinking about banana cream pie.
Okay, well then say banana cream pie, Michelle.
Oh, banana cream pie, Michelle.
Ah!